What's up, everybody? So there was a little problem with the animation setup when you wanted to switch weapons. So I've been looking into it and I came up with two solutions, and I'm going to show both of them. So the first one isn't really the best one, I think, but I'm just going to show it anyway. And then I'm going to show the setup that I think I would use if I would make a game with this setup at this moment. So first of all, I made it so the weapon mesh changes when my lower animation plays, and it switches from the shotgun to the assault rifle and back. And I do need to mention that I added an aim socket to the shotgun mesh, so that should work with my IK setup from the tutorial. So first of all, if we try this and we simply switch weapon, then it's not gonna work because it's still using the old aim socket and we need to change that. So you might think you could simply call that function, but that's not gonna work. So we have the animation instance in here, and if we simply call set aim socket right after we switched our weapons, then it's gonna mess up. So we need to come up with a way to fix that. So right now the orientation is way off and everything is messed up. So first of all, if we go into the animation blueprint, to make your life a little bit easier, you want to go to the set aim socket function, and over here you want to change the IK hand gun bone to the IK hand root bone. So if you do this and you try it again, then you probably see a big difference already, because right now it's roughly in the correct position, but it's still taking all of the blend spaces and aim offsets and all of that stuff into account. So that's why it's still not on point, but it's a lot better already. So now we need to make sure that all of the other animations and IK stuff isn't playing when we want to change the set aim socket. So this is going to be a little bit messy, and that's why I don't like this method of doing it, to be honest. But it's a way of doing it, so I'm gonna show it. So first of all, for the aim correction and the weapon sway, I have added a float variable so I can change the alpha. So I'm going to promote to variable, and I'm going to call this something like animation alpha. And both of these had a default value of 1, so I'm going to plug both of them into the animation alpha. And for the blend spaces, I have them set to 0.3 and 0.2, so I'm just going to make a separate alpha for both of them. So this is going to be my blend space alpha, and I'm going to set the default to 0.25 and plug them into both, so to make my life a little bit easier, I'm just going to even them out. So 0.25 default value for that one, 1 for the animation alpha. So now I'm going to go to the event graph, and I'm also going to create a boolean, and that's going to be called reset aim. So first of all, right at the beginning here, I want to make a little bit of room. I'm going to disconnect my isValid pin, add a branch over here, check if I want to reset aim or not. And if I don't want to reset aim, I'm simply going to continue like we did before. And if I do want to reset it, I'm going to call my set aim socket. Now we need to open up the set aim socket, and right at the end you want to drag in your reset aim and set it back to false. So make sure you do that. And now we need to go to our first person character, and we need to create the floats for the alpha. So I'm going to create 2 new floats in here, my animation alpha, and that's a float. And another one for the blend spaces, so my blend space alpha, and that's a float as well. So compile and save, go back to the animation blueprint, and now make sure you set those variables as well. So let's get them from our character. Get blend space alpha, and make sure you set it over here. And the same for the animation alpha, obviously. So get animation alpha, drag the other side. Let's get a getter, and we want to set it over here. So plug these in and that should work. So if we go back to the first person character, we need to create an event that's going to interpolate the alpha for us. So I'm going to create a custom event, interp animation alpha. And first of all, I'm going to add a branch over here and plug in the condition. So I want to know if I want to interpolate to 0 or back to the default values. So I'm going to call it to 0. Excuse me. So let's get our animation alpha in here and let's get the interpolate to. So interp to, that's a float interp to. And now we want to interpolate to 0. So let's do that one first. That's fine. Let's get the delta time in here, get world delta seconds. And for the P to 0, I'm gonna make it a little bit higher, so something like 15 or something. So make sure we set this to our animation alpha. And then do the same thing for the blend space alpha. So copy and paste and replace the variables. And plug them in like this. Then we need to add a branch over here to check if we are back at 0 or not. So we're going to check for both of them. So the animation alpha is smaller than or equal to, and then get an end node and do the same thing for the blend space alpha. Plug them in the condition, get a little delay in here. That's going to be our world delta seconds again. If it's false, we're going to loop back to the first setter over here, and if it's true, then we're done interpolating, so that should be good to go. Connect these up to the true pin over here, and then we need to do the same thing to interpolate back the other way. So let's copy and paste and plug them into the false pin. So for the target, I'm going to create variables. So the first one, the animation alpha, that's going to be my anim alpha target. So that used to be 1. So let's make sure we set the default value to 1. And then for the speed, I'm going to reduce it quite a bit, so it's a smoother transition the other way around. And let's do the same thing for the blend space alpha. So that's going to be my blend space alpha target. So this needs to be 0.25. So let's set the default value first. And let's reduce the interpolation speed, so that should work. And now we need to make sure that the check is also working, so get rid of the smaller than, and that's greater than or equal to. And we want to get our target values in here, so the target animation alpha. And for the other one, the blend space target. And plug them into the condition again. So we should be good to go over here. So I'm going to create a boolean as well, and that's going to be is switching weapons. And let's make sure it's a boolean. So I'm going to drag it onto the end over here. So when I'm done interpolating back, I'm going to set it back to false. So I know I'm completely done switching weapons and the interpolation is done as well. So then we should be pretty much good to go. If we go back to our switch weapon event. So now over here, when we are done playing the lower animation, I'm gonna call my interpolate event. So interp animation alpha. That was a great name to pick. Let me see, how did I call it? I didn't put a P in there. So inter animation alpha. And I want to interpolate to 0. So let's make sure you select that. And then right when we are done switching weapons. So I don't want to call set aim socket, but I want to drag off my animation instance, and I'm going to set my reset aim boolean and set it to true. So that's going to call the set aim socket function, and after that I'm going to get the interp animation alpha function again and interpolate back to the normal values. So that should pretty much work. And now what we could do is at the beginning right here make sure that we set our is switching weapons to true and plug this back in. Let's see what happens now. So if I switch weapons now, you can see the aim is working like it should. So let me get the crosshair on screen so you can see it a little bit better. So we're not going to disable the crosshair. So it's on point. If I switch weapons, it's still on point. So that's working and it's pretty smooth. But there's one downside to this. As you could see, all of the blend spaces and things got interpolated to 0. So you're going to have a little bit of hiccups over here and there, especially if you move around and switch weapons. And you also need to make sure that you are not aiming down sights, for example. So you would need to make is ADS boolean as well, and make checks so you're not ADSing while you're switching weapons, and you need to block off your ADS. So it's gonna get a little bit messy over there, and it's gonna make your the feeling less smooth, because you have to block animations and you have to wait till all of the weapon switching is done before you can ADS. So I don't think this is the best solution, and I'm going to show you a second solution I came up with that's also really easy to set up, and it's going to be a lot smoother. So I'm back at the tutorial project right now, and I'm back with the issue of having to reset my aim. So all I did is add the aim socket to the shotgun, and the second solution that I came up with is this. So I'm going to create a new character blueprint and call this switch weapon character. Open this up, and all I need to do in here is assign the first person character mesh. So I'm going to set it to the first person arms mesh. For the animation mode, I'm going to set it to use animation asset, and then I'm going to add the weapon in here. So that's a skeletal mesh, weapon mesh, and attach it to the weapon grip socket. So let's attach it to the correct socket over here. So that's done, and now let's go to the event graph, and I'm going to create a function in here. The first one is get new aim socket, and let's do that one first. So what I want to do in here is pretty much copy stuff from the animation blueprint. So let me get my animation blueprint in here. So the get aim socket function, I'm going to call copy these nodes over here and simply paste them over here. So I want to get my weapon mesh, the aim socket, and I want to get my character mesh, and make sure you change this to IK hand root. And then we're simply going to add a return node and drag in the variables. So that's done for the aim socket function, and now let's create a second function, and I'm going to call that one update animation data. And for this function, let me double check. So I want to make sure that my character mesh is in here, and we're gonna set the mesh first. So if you have multiple meshes for your character, you can update the mesh here if you want to. Then we're gonna set the animation that is playing. So set the animation, and that's going to be the idle animation or the pose animation for the weapon. And then you need to make sure that it's actually playing. So you want to drag off here again and look for the play. And let's make sure that it's looping as well. So we can get the character mesh and drag it onto the node and do the same for the animation. So right now we can set the character mesh and the idle animation, or rather the pose animation. And then the last thing we need to do in here is get the weapon mesh, and we also want to set the skeletal mesh for this one. So we want to be able to change the weapon mesh as well. Let's drag it on the node and let's rename it. So there we go. Everything is connected up, so let's get a return node in here and we are pretty much done. So we can go to our normal first person character now. And you want to make sure that at begin play, you could do this for local clients only, because the input events are local and the first person mesh is only for local players. So we can simply get all actors of class. And we're going to get our switch weapon character, connect them up, get the first one in the array, and let's promote it to a variable. So we have the reference to that character right now. And then we can go to our switch weapon events. So let me get my example up quickly. So here we have the switch weapon event, and then we simply want to get our switch weapon character in here, and we want to update the animation. So update animation data, and you could store these values on your weapon blueprint, for example, or if you use structs, then you can store them in your data table. For now I'm gonna set them, so that's going to be my first person mesh. My pose animation is going to be my rifle pose. And the weapon is going to be the assault rifle for this one. And for the first one, it's going to be my shotgun. So I'm calling the update animation data right when the lower animation is done. So give it a little bit of time to make sure everything is set. And then right after the raise animation is done, I'm going to get my switch weapon character again. And I'm going to call the get new aim socket function. And we can do this on blend out, I guess. And simply get the reference to our animation instance in here and set the variables. So set our aim socket location and the rotation. And if we plug these in, this should work. So let's see, all we need to do now is get the character in the level. So you could obviously just stick it under the map or hide it inside a closet somewhere or something, that doesn't matter. And now this should work. So I can switch weapons and the aiming is still right on point. And right now I do not have to worry about ADSing while switching weapons or blocking any animations. So the entire experience stays a lot smoother if you use a setup like this. Some people might think it's a little bit of a hacky way to do it, but yeah, who cares, it works. So it's gonna save you time because you don't have to put in all the variables manually, and once you have this set up, it'll just work smoothly. So I think this would be the method that I prefer at this moment. So that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Talk to you later. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video or you think you might have learned something, please consider leaving a like. I'll be back for more.